here we go.
Welcome, Collective, to another great episode of Brews and Builds. And this episode could not have been done except by our amazing patrons. Whether you're part of the Collective, Squeeze Choir, BigTucks, Mr. Combo, Storm Count, it doesn't matter. We love you guys and thank you for the support. Hey guys, welcome to episode 125 of CMD Towers Brews and Builds. I'm MrComboNumber5 and my fellow host is the nemesis of reason, BigTuck.
I think you've used that one before.
Well, guys, a great way that you can support CMD Tower is to head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMD Tower. We have 4 different tiers for literally $1 a month. You can get into the Discord, you get entered into a bunch of ways to interact with the cast on our episodes, or for $5, $15, or $25, you actually get swag, and continually get new swag whenever we come out with new drops. So, patreon.com/CMD Tower. Now, if you're an existing patron of the Collective and you have someone you want to refer, just make sure they message us on Patreon. We do have a great referral program, so if you get someone to sign up, depending on what tier, will kind of depend on what free swag we send you. So be sure to grow the Collective. Now, we do have a great store. It finally is up and running after a weird WordPress WooCommerce decided to give us the bird and just shut down for however long it was shut down. Did get orders shipped out at cmdtower.com/merch. That's where you're going to be able to get our amazing Jund sweater. That's where you're going to be able to get our foil playmat, our matte sleeves, our reminder tokens, coins, all of the different accoutrements you need to bling out your cardboard. So be sure to head over to cmdtower.com/merch. Also, you've probably heard myself and others talk about their amazing playtest cards that we've used in the past, whether it's when we play with our local play group or even when we do specialty episodes like the Najila episode upcoming or even the Game of Thrones episode. You should head over to abyssproxyshop.com, use the code CMDTower to get 10% off your order. That is stackable, so any other existing discounts on the website, you will get in conjunction with your 10%. And the great thing is every order you do with them, CMD Tower does get a little bit back, so we can keep the lights on and continue to improve that content. So if you need a playtest or proxy card, abyssproxyshop.com. This video wouldn't have been able to be done without our video engineer at _tcoats. Tyler does all the video editing for CMD Tower. So be sure to follow us on YouTube, watch the videos, let us know what kind of content you want to see. So that way we can constantly improve it and get those numbers up. So Brews and Builds is our deck tech series. Since we conquered the path to 32, the 12 themes of EDH decks, we have moved on to the classic brew from day one, Brews and Builds, with a traditional episode. So we describe the brewing of decks similar to how beer is brewed. So we broke it down into 4 different categories. Then we have how does your board actually kind of interact with your opponents? We call that hops.
And hops give the beer its patented bitterness and herbal floral flavors. They grow in a variety of strands and help distinguish subcategories like this pernicious IPA. Op choices help clear and interact with the board so your deck can ultimately do what it wants.
So without further ado, let's get brewing.
Boom!
Today, we, in episode 125, BigTuck beat me to the deck, so therefore I can never build this.
Oh, you wanted to build this?
Built the best Ashiok tribal possible with Umbris imbuing nightmares in your dreams. So this is Umbris Fear Manifest. Let's see how Umbris is going to interact with our opponents in the hot profile. I want to start this off with a card that I like Flash. I hate when Flash is super overcosted, but I think this Eater will be very, very good. So this guy is Dream Eater. 4 colorless, blue, creature Nightmare Sphinx. It's a mythic. It's a 4/3 from Guilds of Ravnica. It has flying, and it has flash, so you can play it at instant speed. When it ETBs, Surveil 4, so we already talked what Surveil is. When you do, you may return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So I look at this in a few different ways. 6 mana, blocker, card advantage, bounce a creature, or a problematic permanent. Right. All 3 check out for me at 6 mana.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm so glad you brought this up because again, you brought this card up on some Brews and Builds not too long ago. I don't remember
Huh.
which one it was, but this was like a cut or an ad or like a theory craft or something.
Oh,
And
maybe for that
again,
surveil deck. Maybe when
yes,
we were trying to do that.
or no, oh, it was for your dimir artifact rigmaroles.
Mm.
I think maybe I don't remember. Oh yeah, because you just bin the artifacts with the surveil and then get them back.
Oh, there we go.
So yes, like again, I think this is a card that I've always found interesting, but just gets replaced by generic removal and that sort of thing. But the
Sure.
fact, again, it just happens to be a nightmare, just plays right into it. So this is another example of a card that's really fun that slots into a deck and actually serves like a really strong purpose, as opposed to just being like, I'm putting this in here for funsies, right?
Yeah, makes
And it's only
sense.
89 cents, so
Super cheap.
small price to pay.
Well, give us your first hop card.
Okay, we talked about how good this sort of effect is in creature heavy decks when we talked about your Animar build. But because I'm playing fewer creatures, I want to have a little bit more control over when they may or may not be leaving the battlefield.
Hmm.
Uh, and I feel like this artifact does a great job of that. We're talking about Erratic Portal. So 4 colorless for an artifact, originally from Tempest, I think. It has 1 tap, return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. And we do have a little bit of things to read here. Veldelka, Wandering Sage, the angry Russian from Orange is the New Black. In Baron's name, cried Lyra as Hannah's sword passed through her. Airtight sends words that the portal is opened, but not for long. Where's my vodka? Or Watka, if you will. So this plays. I'm mostly using this as a hop to bounce my own creatures so I can play them again and get Umbris's ability triggering again. But like we talked about with the equilibrium, eventually this can also be a card that's on the offensive, right? Someone tapped out, they swing at you with your commander, not anymore, right? Even though you can only do it once a turn effectively, I still like this, both on defending my own creatures from removal, that sort of thing, getting those triggers, and potentially bouncing something that I don't even control.
So here's where I would challenge you on this card. And I'm not saying it's not a good card, so I don't want you to think that. But because you have this effect in here, this is essentially Crystal Shard. Um, would you put Crystal Shard in here? Because my opinion is like, if you're like, you know what? No, I wouldn't put Crystal Shard in, then I don't know if Erratic Portal has a
Mm,
place. Like, if anyone ever tells me with a deck, like, hey, I'm going to have this one card in here for this one singular effect, and it's the only one that does it, it's like, well, that sounds kind of fringy to me.
yeah.
Sounds more like if you drew it, it's a happy day. So, would you put Crystal Shard in as well? Or do you think that's almost making you say, like, gosh, does it have a spot in the deck?
It's hard. It's so I was gonna bring this up to you in the spice. I think that there's a build of this that does a lot of bounce and like bounce something to
We
end a
will talk
turn.
about that as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I feel like that. I feel like if that is something that this deck wants, then yes, I would want to run as many of those as I possibly can. And I feel like that's something that I need to judge later. So Erratic Portal is just a card I had lying around, to be honest with you. So
Okay.
that was an easy slot in. And I don't have the data yet, but if we feel that that is the way to go with this deck, which I think is certainly a possibility, then yes, I would run them both and probably the aforementioned enchantment, which we may or may not get to at some other point.
Yeah, well, and then even to that point, Tuck, if you go with that direction, and I know you said you're going to add more mana rocks, I think then you evaluate, well, do I put Unwinding Clock in here? Do I
Mm-hmm.
have enough things that these artifacts are activating other things to do blinking or
Yeah,
nightmare stuff? Because then that makes Erratic Portal and Crystal Shard that much better. Because now, oh, I could tap a Soul Ring, activate both, kind of do
yeah,
my deal. So,
absolutely. I that's these are the sort of questions I was asking myself when I was building and looking at this list. So I'm glad that we're on the same page with that too.
well, there we go. Well, the next card I'm going to talk about, I believe, is a modern staple.
Wait, is it an artifact
May be able to
creature?
be nope. It might be able to be played free if it's in your opening hand.
Oh, go right ahead. It's like the
Yeah,
best
I
card in the
figured.
deck.
Leyline of the Void, disgusting. 2 colorless black enchantment. If it's in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. And if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So literally, Umbris only gets big when stuff's in
Yep.
exile. So you plant this down. Um, and stuff moving forward gets exiled, but it doesn't exile the existing graveyard.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but you do have a little bit of text to read here. Oh, not your favorite, Talim Tor, aka Werner Herzog, the German.
The German from what?
So we were just talking about Book of Boba Fett before we started.
Oh,
He's
that guy.
yes, yeah. The old wise and German man.
Uh, Way of treachery, and this is Russian. This is bad. Oblivion converge. Just moving forward. Yes. Yeah.
Just moving right along.
This card's great. I do wish it had a more rest in peace effect when it
Yeah.
ETBs, exile all graveyards, and then everything moving forward. But at least it does get it at some point.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a couple cards that you pretty much have to run if you're playing a deck like this, and this is certainly one of them. If you have this in your opener, it's just such a nut draw. For free, people cracking fetch lands, people sacrificing baubles and whatnot to draw
Yeah.
cards. Like you're just gonna get so much value out of this for such a small price of entry.
Totally agree. All right, Tuck, give us your next hop.
All right. I'm not sure if I know how to pronounce this correctly, but this squid-looking MFer is also a card that is a big, big punch in my Eureka deck. And again, this has to be a horror. So, of course, we're talking about Grazilax, Elithiid, or Mind Flayer Scholar. So, one colorless and double blue for a 3/2 legendary creature horror. Shocker. It's a rare from Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. Yes, I know I was wrong on that. And it's a 3/2. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. And then, whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. So, and we got a little text here, which is Ulta Falconwrath, aka Batman for some reason. So, thanks to Collective for that one. Okay, I'm gonna throw my voice out on this one. I can feel it right. You studied hard. How delicious. I'm Batman. Swear to me. How did he do that? God.
Swear to me.
There it is. So yeah,
It's all right.
what do you mean it's all right? It's incredible. Like you get now all my 1/1 minions that don't do shit or nightmares or horrors. Now they just get blocked and get bounced or get damage in. What's not to like?
Well, this card's not a hop card. It's clearly a grain card because it's drawing you cards, and that's literally all it does.
But it also
So-
interacts with the board because things are bouncing back to my hand. It makes my opponents want to choose if they're going to block or not.
I guess.
There's
I wouldn't say this card helps you interact with your opponent's board states in any way, shape, or form because you can't bounce their creatures. But the card is good, and I do think because this is basically the creature version of that enchantment, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that one doesn't let you draw cards, I don't think, but
No.
it's like if it ever gets blocked, you get to bounce it. And that is very good for. And I think more we talk about this, Tuck, I think you're just going to have to accept you have an ETB deck.
Yeah.
And like this screen, like we've now talked about enough cards where it's like, oh, yeah, I want to bounce this stuff back to my hand so I could replay it. And it's like, well, you're ETB then.
Yeah.
And I would say a lot of your stuff, you probably want to do less of the bouncing back to hand and more of the just flickering.
The flickering, yeah.
Because you only have a handful of stuff that deals about cast. Everything else is just ETB. But yeah, Grazilax is good.
He's real good. I was really
real
happy when
good.
they printed him. And he also does work in Arena.
Well, this card is stupid. No reason this thing needs to be a horror, but it was printed so long ago. I guess they just wanted to give it the designation. I believe this came from Planar Chaos. This guy is the opening line of the episode, Nemesis of Reason.
Yes.
3 colorless Dimir creature, Leviathan Horror, a rare. It's a 3/7. Whenever Nemesis of Reason attacks, defending player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Basically a cheaper, less threatening, and aggressive Ulamog.
Yes. And you do have a little bit here. Ailey, the Comic Cleric, a.k.a. a Southern Belle.
Oh, words describing it fail. Pages relating it shrivel. Tales recounting it in, darling.
That one. That one.
So yeah, I like this guy. I mean, it is old school verbiage, so it's not whenever it deals combat damage, because then it's like, oh, I can do double strike and get
Mhm.
some things. I would assume you just had this laying around, and that's why it's in here.
I bought it for like $10, and then it got reprinted, and it's one of the ones that got reprinted in mystery boosters, and then the price got
Ah,
cut in half for no reason, right? Uh, I think, like I said, there were some pieces of this left over from a mill deck, and I didn't want to lean too heavy into the mill, but I do like this idea of just arbitrarily filling up people's graveyards, and then that's just a juicy target to pump up Umbris by a gazillion, right?
yeah,
At a
that's
later
fair.
thing, and that's kind of like the sub tech that I'm trying to get into.
Well, why don't we get to your last pick for your hop?
I thought you were going to talk about this one when you talked about your modern rigmaroles, because this is a card that like everyone will tell you is good, and then you try to play it in Commander, and it never works because it doesn't do much. But again, because it's arbitrarily a Phyrexian horror, it has a lot of utility in this deck. So I'm of course talking about our old pal. He's just a little baby boy, Spellskite. Two colorless
Mm.
for an artifact creature, Phyrexian Horror, that's an 0/4. And then for one Phyrexian blue, let me rephrase that to life, change a target of target spell or ability to spell Spellskite, right? So it's a low cost horror, triggers Umbris, but more importantly, that second ability I think is sneaky good, right? Because if we're talking about any sort of removal or any sort of interaction that my opponents are going to play, I don't care. Path to Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, any of that stuff on this, go ahead. Doesn't matter to me, right? Like I already got my value out of it. So for me, I kind of look at this as like one other layer protecting Umbris while also playing right into everything that he wants to do.
So here's the question though. Someone starts activating abilities that are just like untap target, untap creature. Would you pay 2 life to like stymie their effect? Like, I'm just wondering how
Yeah,
petty you're gonna get with Spellskite and being able to Phyrexian 2 life on anything. Like, oh, you wait, what are you about to do? You're about to like mill 3 cards and then return a land from the graveyard. No, I'm gonna change the target of that.
I'll just do that for
I'm gonna
two
do it.
life.
Yeah, like, how petty are you gonna be with that? Are you gonna be judicious because you don't want people to hate on you?
I think it just depends on the table, right? Like
Okay.
I think this is in my typical deck building fashion is going to turn into the arch enemy pretty quick because you don't care about what opponents. It's like it's your 3 exile zones versus my 1 creature, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I try not to be a petty player, but sometimes, like I said, I try to I try to lead a pious life, but sometimes my decks are just made for sin. And this is one of those cards that very well maybe meant for that sort of future.
Well, guys, that's gonna wrap up the hot profile for Umbris.